Good morning. This Wednesday on Norma Talks, we're following on up with past lives. Or should I say today is more about future lives. And interestingly enough, I had an email during the week saying, well, as lives are concurrent, why do we call them past lives? And I actually sort of emailed back and said, well, that's what I'm going to talk about this coming Wednesday, which is right now. I'm going to explain. Actually, it's really interesting because I sat down this morning and picked up my booklet I wrote called Many Lives and Many Ways of Remembering Them in 2009, just to put some couple of little things that were in the back of my mind back into focus. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how I first discovered that there were future lives. This would be going way back, probably into the 80s, maybe early 90s, but probably 80s. I was leading some past life regression workshops in my home. And usually what I would say, because I would say, I want you to go back now after getting sort of relaxed. And I have a technique, it's more of a meditation technique than a hypnotherapy technique. I'm not a hypnotherapist. I don't know anything about hypnotherapy, but I do use a meditative technique. And so anyway, I said to everybody, usually I say, I want you to go back now to see a past life. And this time I didn't use the word past lives. I just said, I want you to go and see a life. And one of the ladies, when we came back to discuss what we had seen, kind of had a funny look on her face and said, I went into the future. And at that point, concurrent lives and lives happening at the same time wasn't really a big subject. It wasn't really written about too much. A lot of the books that came out later hadn't come out. And so anyway, I went, oh, okay. If that means that one person has gone and seen a past life, there's some more. So over the years, it began happening. Now, some of the things that really stand out is another time I was speaking at a spiritualist church in Burnaby and was doing a past life regression workshop in the afternoon. And often I usually do in a workshop, which is a couple of hours long, just sort of an open life first, what life relates to this one. And then I might just give one with leaving it open to wherever you go or what you want to see. And again, there was this one person sitting with quite a bemused face, like not quite believing what had gone on. And several people had spoken up about what they had experienced when this, and I was a young man, said, Norma, I went way into the future. And then he went on to explain, and later on I had other cases. He said, I was in a spaceship and I crashed and it was weighing like 3,000, and I had to assimilate here because I couldn't get back out. I couldn't, and so there were two things there. The spaceship thing, I'll talk about it another time, but because I've had that several times about how space people get here and begin to start evolving into the lifetime on this lovely Earth planet, which is emotional. So here was another case which always stayed with me because of not only of the spaceship crashing, but that it was way in the future. And he had this whole life he could explain that was in the future. Now, the third time that was really interesting, and it's not that many years ago, I was doing a small workshop for a group of people in Victoria, British Columbia. And there was a number of probably ladies my age or close to it, maybe not quite as aged as I am at this time, but we could be considered more in the older realm. They had not done anything like this before. They understood or heard about regression, but they hadn't done it. They hadn't experienced it. And so this one lady, when we came back again, the bemused look on the face, that like, I can't believe this. This can't be true. And she said, "Oh, I was in the future. I was like," and she named a year, which of course I do not remember, but again, up in the 300s, 3000s. And she said, "And I was an astronaut." And I've never wanted to be an astronaut. I don't know anything. And of course, really, whenever we go to look at a life, it always has some relativity to what's happening in your life now. But besides that, this lady was so, like, she just couldn't get over the fact that in the future, she was going to be an astronaut. Now, one of the things I also wanted to talk about how future lives would affect is something that happened in my life. And I wrote about this in my little booklet as well. And it came about, and I sometimes, I think I don't usually like reading, but I'm going to read this out, what I wrote a little bit. It was a future life which determined how I was going to respond to going bankrupt. Many years earlier, during my back issues, I had seen a past life in New York. And what I want to explain, I have had a lot of back issues in my life. I hurt myself quite young several times through my sports activities. And when I was 30, my back went out really badly for the first time. And in my 40s, it really, really was quite serious as to how it worked. So anyway, back to my little booklet here. I put, it was the 1929 stock market crash, and I had jumped from a window, landing on the pavement, breaking nearly every bone in my body, but I did not die immediately. Several years after that past life regression, a psychic artist did a past life drawing for me, showing lives that were completed and some that were not. In the top corner, she drew this man with a full face and a mustache. And when she was explaining the faces, she said, "This person died in an earthquake." Now, I had another life where I died in the San Francisco earthquake. And I wrote here, I knew it was the man who had jumped because I had seen him. He did not look like the man who had died in the San Francisco earthquake/fire. It was interesting that it was shown as a life not completed. Now, fast forward to 2003. My accountant advised me to declare bankruptcy, something I did not want to do. Several times in my life, I had run into economic difficulties, and bankruptcy had loomed, but I managed to avoid it each time. This time, it looked like I could not avoid it. I found it embarrassing as a metaphysical teacher who taught prosperity, and I was going bankrupt. The reality was, for 4 months, I had very little money coming in, with lots going out, and there were more debts than money. And the logical reasons did not stop my embarrassment, being ashamed, and feeling a failure. I want to just point out how that happened. You will remember when the towers went down in 2001? At that time, I was traveling a lot and presenting Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, and I had places booked all over in North America coming in and teaching about the game and how it worked. As you might remember, 2001, nothing happened. Like the 2 months, the next following 2 months when I was in the States, everyone was petrified, everyone was frightened, nothing happened. And consequently, I had all these airfares on my charge card, naturally, and everything else. And so consequently, here I was fighting that, like trying to get out of that hole that came about because all these events around after 2001, after September the 11th, didn't take place. Now, carrying on back here. Wanting to understand more, because I needed to understand what was going on with this money stuff, I asked a friend and a graduate of my power program to come and lead me in a regression to understand. I wanted someone else to lead me so I would not leap over things I may not want to look at. I used my color technique and discovered there were 3 stars which related to this particular issue. The first star I looked at told the story of a man named Hans who was born in Holland and at the age of 10 moved to New York. He grew up to become a developer, a man in my previous regression and the psychic's picture. He became a wealthy man. Then came the crash. of 1929. And although I had thought he'd jumped because he lost his money in the crash, wasn't the truth. He jumped because people who owed him money could not pay him, and therefore he could not pay his bills. So he actually jumped after, like little time after the crash. He felt embarrassed and ashamed, and even though it was not his fault, but he could not face the knowledge that he was unable to pay, he jumped. And remember, he didn't die right away. It was very unpleasant when I experienced that. Then the middle star was me, which I will come back to. The third star was a future life. When I saw this life, I was a 30-year-old African-American living in Los Angeles area who was a successful businessman. It became very clear to me that I needed to handle the bankruptcy well, with my head held high, no embarrassment, not upset, without a sense of failure. It was just something to be experienced, so my future life as this man could be successful in all ways. And that is what I did. I filed for bankruptcy, and interestingly, my life within 3 weeks of filing changed considerably, with miracles happening to me one after the other. In fact, that particular decision opened up the path which has brought my life to this point, which was when I wrote the book in 2009, and still in some ways to this point that I am now. So we often forget that this is we are learning here. We are learning things, and whether it is a past life, a present life, a future life, there are connections. What we want to do is ensure, because our consciousness is here in this life, that we do the best and the most that we can to rectify decisions that have not worked for us in the past. I'm just stumbling a bit over here because I'm trying to think the best way of saying this. If I had really realized that the money issues that I was having was past life based when I began having them, it would have made probably a bit of a difference. I hadn't quite connected that yet. And remember, I've spent many years putting different philosophies and thoughts and things together. And there was another element I wrote here that I wanted to bring point. Our soul, and this is another thing that I wrote, our soul will pick a body which responds to what it is we feel or think we need to learn. Now, learn is something else. I like the word now, today, called understanding. We need to understand. And it's not, we do learn, but the key is not just the learning process, but to understand fully within our whole system. The body which holds in the DNA similar beliefs that of the soul holds. The body will have the genetic information on the DNA that we resonate to and therefore are attracted to. Now, it's interesting because I grew up in a family with my dad who went through the Depression, who worked really hard, supported other people. But I had a mother who basically raised my brother and I, who never really had access to money. And always there was a feeling of loss of money. And both my brother and I have worked well, and I wrote a book about this actually, Spiritual Principles of Wealth, because I realized both he and I went out and we produced money, but we also had losses because my mother did not know how to hold it. She knew how to create, she dreamed of creating it, which she somehow passed on to us. But she did not know what to do with it or how to hold it. Now, my brother did very, very well as well, probably even better economically than I did. I went up and down like a yo-yo. And so I came to learn a whole lot of other new principles. But the question commonly asked, again, I'm going to bring this up here, is whether we choose our parents. And it appears that often we do. I remember running into the first time when people didn't choose their parents. What was that about? I was told we chose to be here, we chose our parents, we chose all these things. And then I began to realize more and more, especially as I moved more into doing transformation work for people, I found that isn't always accurate. And I found, like when I found that people also crashed here from space beings and things like that. And I really will talk about that probably following this, because this all fills in. How come we're here? How come we've chosen Earth or not chosen Earth? And what does that lead to? And I found a lot of information out by readings that I do for people on following their souls back to the source of the beginning, and some of the things and the planets and the dimensions I found was phenomenal. But I also found how come people arrive here on this planet. And sometimes they have had future lives and ended up back in this present time. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Because in our consciousness, to believe, excuse me, to believe that the progression is like, because we're born and we grow through, and then we eventually leave our bodies by dying. And so the body is no more, but the soul lives on. So I actually, when I'm doing workshops, I demonstrate this with a diagram that we can move into a time period that's way ahead or way behind. I used to actually have fun thinking, well, where do I want to go next? Like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to be? Do I want to go back in the past and, relive some of those things? Or do I want to go in the future? Or do I want to leave? Because when you become aware enough, you can have that choice of leaving the dimension that we're in here. So there's lots of things that we can choose to do as to where we go. But in the theory of these concurrent lives, our consciousness, I actually want to say too, again, is like, not everybody can look at future lives. I tried to do workshops where people, okay, we're going to look at a future lives. Not everybody's consciousness was ready for that. Not everybody was ready to look at themselves in the future and see how things were then and what was taking place and what was going on. I know I made a note somewhere here in the book, in my little book here, and I just pulled out a couple of pages that were relating to future lives, is that very often people were seeing themselves. I remember, can't find where I actually had it. I thought I highlighted it, but I guess I didn't. Where people had lives on the moon, remember that? Where they, here we are. So when it comes to future lives, I've had students see themselves living on the moon, clients living beneath the earth, and others experiencing many different lives in the future. And it always is, what is it that you need to let go? See, being a past life regressionist, to me, it wasn't a matter of, and I tell my clients this when they sign up for me, I'm not interested in your fact finding. I'm not interested in, oh, I was this, that, or the other. Maybe you could call it sightseeing. What I am interested in, what are the regrets? What are the guilt? What are the other elements that you've had that you haven't let go of and you need to? Because a soul will, despite what some people will say, the soul brings with it unresolved issues. And unfortunately, and I referred to this last week, we sometimes will go round and round and round, remaking the same decisions over and over again because they're still not resolved. We need to resolve those past issues that have not been resolved, because until we do, until we become clear and we don't get upset by things, we just allow things to flow, there is a tendency to repeat. And so future lives are important, yes, to understand what you still didn't let go. Or did you choose, like the man who crashed in the space, that's where he came in to this planet, and that's where he started, but he ended up back, and we were probably in the 90s then. And the late 90s when I did that workshop there, I would think. So you see, it's not like we go chronologically, like this year, then next, whatever. We could be all over the map. We could be anywhere. And so it's really about, what is it that we need to come to terms with? What is it that we need to discover? What is it that we need to understand? So in our next life, whether it be in the past, in the future, another concurrent life in this moment, you have to decide. And for me, the whole thing is really about letting go. Letting go guilt, letting go regrets, letting go emotion that you just don't let go. A lot of people, babies are born angry. I've seen that. Babies are born angry. They've been angry. Maybe the soul came into this angry, into this vibration of earth, angry. And I've seen that. And so we need to resolve those emotions and let them go so that we can move on into our next incarnation more aligned with big growth, with the love vibration of the planet, more aligned with the awareness and the acceptance of who, not only who we are, but who everybody else is. So we have more tolerance. We understand how we are in relation to the big cosmos of things. We're one little planet in a huge, huge galaxy of many different universes. And there are many, many experiences waiting. But we have to leave this planet in order to go to see those ones for sure. So anyway, this ends what I'm going to say today about this. And again, I appreciate the email because it was going to be about what I was going to talk about. I hope I answered some of the questions that were posed. If not, please email me because it helps me give me focus as to what I want to address or what I want to say or what I want to look at. And so until next week, just keep pressing the likes. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Or you can always go to my website, normacowie.com, and you can email me through there too. So thank you for being and listening. I appreciate it. You have a great week. Thank you.